So proud and honored to be here with our esteemed guests who will introduce themselves in a little bit. Dana Hilfinger and Michelle Wallace are part of the Ag and Natural Resources team here at Central State University, and Ambrose Moses and Amber Twitty are representing the Community Economic Development team on this conversation, this moderated conversation. I'm here as the moderator, Eric Smith, and I'm also on the Community and Economic Development team here at Central State University's Cooperative Extension Service, which is a 1890 land grant program, and happy to be here to talk about this important topic. Just as a brief intro, I want to point out that the work we're doing is here to help small businesses, agribusinesses, farms, and communities find their best path forward to being resilient and strong and successful. And if we can help you in any way, please feel free to reach out. A couple statistics that come to mind that I've read over the years from CSU-Extension and other places, but it's interesting to me that I think about local food systems that our average, when you go to the grocery store, the food you eat, the food you pick up, has probably traveled about 1,000 miles to get there. That means a lot of it's coming from out of state. And in fact, we have a pretty leaky bucket. We lose about $30 billion, they estimate, in money that goes to other states for the food that we eat or the agricultural equipment that we buy. And so again, the more we can consume things locally and produce things locally, the stronger we'll be. Here's another interesting statistic. They estimate that about the average city, the average community, has about 3 days worth of food on its shelves in grocery stores and corner markets and such. What if a huge disaster happens or some other issue and that supply chain gets disrupted, that's bringing those food products from that 1,000 miles away, that gets disrupted, we have 3 days worth of food in most cities. And the average family only has about 5 days worth of food on in its pantries and shelves and refrigerator. So that speaks to the importance of sort of building local regional food systems, because that's the only way we can create a more resilient infrastructure that we can weather shocks to the system, the food system, such as a huge disruption. And we're seeing more of this. This felt like a very important topic right now, because we've seen with the pandemic, with COVID, we've seen things not showing up on the shelves like normal. And so it's like, well, we probably need to pay attention to this and take seriously the idea of building strong, resilient local food systems, regional food systems. And so I'm so happy to have our guests here with us to talk about this. And I'm going to first invite them to say a little bit about themselves, and then we'll go ahead and get started with the conversation. So we'll go from Dana to Ambrose to Amber and then to Michelle. And then Paige, if you're available to do that from where you are as well, that would be wonderful. So Dana.
Okay. Thanks, Eric, and thanks for the invitation. Hi, everyone. My name is Dana Hilfinger. I'm an extension educator for Central State University in agriculture and natural resources. I've been with Central State for a little over a year now, and previous to that, I had a lot of experience working on farms. So I am a first-generation farmer myself. I didn't grow up on a farm. I grew up in a city. I came to farming after I graduated college and found that I was very interested in learning to grow food, and went on to apprentice and then manage on diversified vegetable farms of the like that Eric was referencing in the beginning, those kind of farms that provide produce kind of on a local scale or a regional scale. So that's a lot of my background, and a lot of my interest in food system resilience kind of comes from being motivated to encourage and assist that new generation of farmers that wants to also have their own farm, live that kind of lifestyle, run a successful business and be sustainable in the long term. And so I came into Extension kind of with that framework in mind of wanting to support other beginning farmers and farmers who are supporting the local food system. Yeah, and I guess just one other thing I'll say is a general plug for farming. I think it's exciting to see that there is an increase in the number of individuals who want to farm. That was one of the things that the most recent ag census showed, which is encouraging, I think, and is pretty exciting. For me, I think it blends kind of these like wonderful different skills together where you're problem solving a lot, you're working outside often, you're working with your hands. And so I think there's a lot of, kind of wonderful components about it that draw people to it. And I hope to be able to kind of support them in their journey.
Thank you. Ambrose?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ambrose Moses, Extension Educator in the Community and Economic Development program area. And in terms of our topic here today, I'm not a farmer, but when I was little, I mean, we had, we grew our own food down in Oakdale, Louisiana, but once we moved up to Ohio, we never did any of that. My thing here, when we talk about the resiliency of the food system, and in hearing what Dana is saying, I think we do need more farmers. I want to, as part of community and economic development, do what we can to do what I can to help create the opportunity for more. But I think that it's important that we look at them being viable operations as well. And so it's important, I think, to just have them all merge together in terms of the business practices, having the right structures, those kinds of things. I think those kinds of concepts need to be just second nature, even in agribusiness. So I'm looking forward to the discussion here today, and yeah, I just want to do my part and share and help and empower people and communities.
Wonderful, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Amber Twitty. I am on the CED team along with Paige, Ambrose, Eric, and under our leadership of Anthony Barwick. And I've been in community and economic development for over 30 years. However, I'm a rookie in the agriculture space. So I've been learning a lot over the last year. And I think what I bring to the table is looking at the other disciplines that I've worked in within CED and applying that to the agriculture to make farming sexy again, to make it a business for people who've been gardening for years, to think of it as a business, moving from a hobby to a business, and for young people to see how important that is, because this is something that touches everybody's quality of life, right? And we have so many food deserts in the cities. So this, the work in this space allows us to eradicate some food deserts, 1 acre lot at a time, right? So that's how I think our CED team is a valuable asset to the whole agriculture space.
Thank you so much, Amber. And Amber's been kind enough to help me manage the chats and some of those conversations today. So thank you, Amber. Michelle, and then Paige.
Hi, I'm Michelle Wallace. I am the Northwest Ohio Agriculture Natural Resource Extension Educator, and I come here, I've been with Central State for a little over a year, and I came to Ohio from North Carolina, where I was an extension educator with North Carolina State University. I did grow up on a farm, a different kind of farm, a kibbutz, which is a collaboratively owned, cooperatively owned, very large farm that's owned by the whole community. And so when I moved to the United States, I studied agriculture. I studied horticulture specifically. I also have a background in business and landscape architecture. And when I worked for Cooperative Extension in North Carolina, I worked with both consumers and with small farmers. A lot of the farmers that I worked with were transitioning from growing tobacco into growing something else, and they needed a lot of help in transitioning from doing an agronomic crop that was a high dollar agronomic crop to finding a comparable high dollar crop that was that could be grown and kind of reap the benefits of that non-tobacco product, like strawberries and blueberries and cut flowers. And so here in Ohio, I'm really excited to be working with individuals who are looking to start their small farm or have a small farm and just need some more guidance. And it's a really exciting and somewhat terrifying journey. And there's a lot of benefits to becoming your own boss and being able to see the products that you've grown and produced yourself. It's something that you can really be proud of.
Thank you.
Thanks. This is Paige. I'm joining you from the parking lot of Athens High School where it's pouring down rain, so it's nice to see all of your faces today. And thanks again, Eric, for having all of us together. I have been on the CED team for a little over a year, and prior to that, I served as a tourism director in Athens County for about 14 years. And part of my work there involved the creation of a collaborative brand to promote local foods. Local foods is an important part of the economy in Athens and in Southeast Ohio. And we developed a collaborative brand referred to as the 30-mile meal. It represented about 180 growers and producers within a 30-mile radius of Athens. And of course, they were involved in the local foods economy at varying levels. Some of them had year-round production. They had products that were available at the market, that were available through CSAs, available in the grocery store, available for individual purchase through a website. And then we had some members that were seasonal producers and growers who specialized in something that they were passionate about or that started out as a hobby. And we built that collaborative brand to increase local spending, and it was hugely successful. And of course, the 30-mile meal continues today. It's been replicated in about 5 other communities through the Central Appalachian region. What I loved about the collaborative brand was that it was a brand that producers could attach themselves to that didn't cost them anything. So often we see marketing dollars being very low, especially for small-scale farms. So it allowed them to have the collective power of marketing that was done by the Visitors Bureau, by AceNet, and by some of the large-scale producers in the area. It also gave consumers something to attach themselves to. So there was a tremendous amount of local pride that existed around foods already. And then when we actually branded it into the 30-mile meal, we actually saw people attach themselves to that brand, use the hashtag, share their meals that they produced from what they bought at the farmer's market, share their farm tours and their farm-to-table experiences. And that's something that I'm very interested in developing further, particularly with beginning farmers and small-scale seasonal farmers. And, there's always lots more to talk about there, but what I bring to the table in this whole small-scale farming conversation and developing a resilient local food community. So thanks again for having me.
Wonderful. So great to have you. And I'm so excited to be able to circle back to everyone. I have a question for each of our panelists, and then we'll turn things to turn things over for any questions that may come in. So be thinking about what kind of questions you want to bring to the table to our panelists. I want to start off. It seems to me, if you're going to build a strong local resilient food system, well, you have to be producing as a community, as a region, you have to be producing more of your own food to put into the system, right? And so I'd like to turn to Dana, if I could. If we think about that whole process, right? So you have to produce more, you have to aggregate, you have to process, you have to distribute and get it to market, to the market outlets for consumers and sell it. But that whole chain really depends on if we're producing more. And so I know, Dana, that you're working with some beginning farmers. And so I'd like for you to maybe start us off in this conversation. Can you share about what you're doing and what you might recommend to other localities that are interested in adding new growers into their local or regional food system? So how do you go about that?
Sure. And that's a big question, so I don't know that I will have all the answers to it necessarily, but from my perspective, I can certainly talk about the programs that we have going and some observations that I've made in a couple of different communities. So one of the big programs that we have within the Agriculture and Natural Resources team, and in collaboration with the CED group and others, is some of the beginning farmer programs. And in particular, we're working on a pilot program in the Dayton area where we're working with 2 community partners on establishing incubator farms for beginning farmers. In this case, we're working a lot with individuals who are at that stage where they have the passion and the interest, but they don't have the experience and they don't have, those kind of those number of hours, that you need in order to really be proficient in a skill. And so part of what we're doing is providing them through our community partners with an actual plot where they can learn to grow their own produce. And these plots are about 1/10 of an acre each. So it's bigger than kind of your backyard garden beds, but smaller than maybe what the average farm would be for any of them who graduate from this. But enough kind of to give them a taste for what it would be like. And then we, in addition to that, provide supplies and materials to get them started. So kind of that initial, like getting over the hump of just needing some of those resources. And then a big part of what my work is, along with my colleague, Mark Amante, who's the other extension educator in the Southwest, we're doing regular classes with the individuals at those locations. So throughout 2021, we were doing weekly classes with the farmers through most of the spring, going into the summer, and then we switched kind of to a every other week schedule going into the fall here. But those classes were really geared toward providing, a lot of that kind of background information about growing produce, growing vegetables, kind of all of the basic all of the basic kind of concepts from like how do you prepare the soil to plant something? How do you, what's kind of the correct way to transplant a tomato to minimize the amount of shock that it might experience going into the ground? How do you trellis that tomato? How do you harvest that tomato? All of those things. And as you can imagine, those topics are really kind of probably best demonstrated in the field. So our classes were all really field-based. Individuals had the opportunity to, try whatever kind of task we were talking about. So they were getting a lot of hands-on experience as well. And we were there kind of to serve as mentors through that process. In addition to that, we also partnered with a local farm through that same program who served as the farm mentor for these individuals. So providing them kind of with that expertise for someone who's an actual practitioner. So it's not just coming from Extension, it's also coming from another individual within the community, and trying to build that kind of networking that I think a lot of farmers, more established farmers, would tell you is a really essential component to being successful as a farmer. So that's one of the main programs that we have going on currently in the Dayton area. We're working on developing more models like that around the state in the coming years. So keep an eye out if you're in a different part of the state and are looking at being involved in something like that. But in general, a lot of the work otherwise has been that we're doing is around kind of supporting beginning farmers in the various different ways that they need support. Like Ambrose said it really well, it's one thing to just love growing food, but in order for it to be sustainable in the long run, like passion doesn't sustain a farming business. You have to have the business skills to be able to make it work. It has to make sense in terms of the amount of profit that you can generate compared to your costs. And so those are a lot of that kind of like getting over that hump of structuring your business or your farm as a business is a big component of the technical support too that we provide, so that in kind of keeping with the topic that we're discussing today, if we want to build more resilient food systems, we can't just have farmers that are able to have a go at it for a couple of years and then fizzle out because they, it doesn't work in terms of the profit and losses, or because they, can't find a market or whatever it is. And so that component is really kind of central to the work, in addition to just providing information on how to grow produce itself. I guess there's a couple other maybe in kind of the recommendation realm that I would say from some other experiences and work that I've done previous to coming to Central State that seems to have been really good ways of supporting individuals who are interested in farming with kind of going through those early years. One of the programs, and I think this is kind of really important as you're beginning as a farmer, it can be challenging to establish the kinds of markets that you might need in order to be able to sell all your product, make the kinds of profit that you need, et cetera. And also maybe to provide produce in the communities that you're actually growing the food. So we work with a lot of urban farmers that are growing food in food deserts, and it doesn't make sense financially. They're not going to be able to stay in business if they sell produce at the price that can be afforded by individuals in that community. So in Columbus, in the last couple of years, they've established a program where the city has partnered with Kroger to subsidize the cost of that produce for farmers who are farming in the city and wanting to sell their produce within the city. So they subsidize the cost of essentially a CSA box or a farm stand. And that helps to, provide that kind of stable market while also infusing food, locally grown food, into communities that need it. So I think that's one example, I guess, kind of almost of like a policy recommendation or a programmatic recommendation that can be beneficial for beginning farmers. I've also done a lot of work in the past with co-ops. And was involved with a couple cooperative projects, one in Mansfield, Ohio. And that one was also, again, kind of about providing that guaranteed buyer for the individuals who were part of the co-op, which provided the farmers who were a part of that group to be able to focus kind of on honing their growing skills initially and being less kind of needing to spend less time then on actually marketing their product. Marketing can take up marketing for a local grower in terms of going to the farmer's market or managing a CSA or selling to a local restaurant can be kind of burdensome in terms of the amount of time that it can take. It can take a pretty large proportion of the grower's time throughout the week. So by consolidating and coordinating that marketing amongst a group of 10 growers, they were able to not have to worry about that as much, and really be more invested in just growing the produce. So that was another type of program that I think was a good way to support beginning farmers, and help them kind of as they're getting established, without having to worry so much about where they're going to sell their produce each week. Yeah, I think that's it. Sorry, I know I took a long time there.
No, thank you so much.
I just have one question for the program that you were referencing. Do you have the name of it or a contact person in the city of Columbus?
Yeah, it's called the Farm Share program.
Okay.
Might be Farms Share. No, Farm Shares. It's Farm Share. If you look up Farm Share, you'll find it in Columbus. Yeah. I think the coordinator for the project, her name is Jamie Moore.
Wonderful. That's
In the
great.
track for our audience. Thank you.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, so then that's really helpful, Dana, and sets us up, right? So for my next question, I want to turn to Ambrose now. Dana talked about co-ops and strategies, because in the end, it's not just about growing more produce locally to move through the local system, but there's a lot of other issues, right, in that chain from when it's produced to where it's sold. It has to also be aggregated and assembled and distributed, right? And so co-ops is one way to do that. But I know you've had some experience working with co-ops and using technology in Cleveland to help with that process. And so I just wondered if you would be willing to share about that. You've been working on these issues in Cleveland and in the urban environment, again, using technology to work out logistical issues and then building the organizational structure to make it happen. I wonder if you could speak to that for a little bit.
Sure. I started in 2017, so just a little bit of organizational or extension history. As the first county agent for the university, my territory was Cuyahoga County, and while there, at that time, our county agents had their primary program area, and mine was CED. But we also had to sort of coordinate programs in the other three program areas within the county. And so I did have to coordinate programs and make some connections with the agricultural community, which was going to be urban ag, since it was Cleveland, or Cuyahoga County in Cleveland, Ohio. And so it gave me an introduction to meet, a number of active organizations, groups, individuals in that area. But as I went around from, farm or high tunnel to high tunnel, that were being sort of celebrated as success, I didn't know a lot about ag, but there was something that was telling me that I don't see how this is sustainable. I'm not seeing where it's producing enough to sustain even the owner and their family. So in 2018, I started hearing discussions about blockchain technology, and Cleveland wanted to become the blockchain hub of one of the blockchain hubs of the country in terms of discussing the technology. And so I started looking into it and said, I wonder if this could be used to help small businesses in some way. And as I looked at it and studied it, it seemed to provide a tool to facilitate even small transactions, and sort of lower, once you get it in place, to reduce the transaction costs of those smaller transactions. So I was thinking, well, maybe these high tunnels, if they were to be able to aggregate, pull themselves together, and now have a larger amount to sell to a larger buyer, they may be able to generate some revenue that they otherwise wouldn't have. And so maybe it can then start to move towards being more sustainable. And so talking with some of the folks in the community, we put on a couple of presentations. That there was an urban ag conference, a national urban agriculture conference in Cleveland, and so folks from around the country came in, and we did a presentation, to the body, and the idea started to catch on. We started to get some calls, and there was a group of urban farmers who wanted to do something using that technology. Now, the actual implementation of the technology was going to take a while, and it is taking a while. But in order to do that, you also had to form one of the things in terms of aggregating was going to be the formation of a co-op, which, there's been some mention of that here today by Dana and also by Michelle. So we used I used our role as extension to attend the meetings from the very beginning, and also I guess I should add, my outside of my work with Central State and prior to coming to the university, I practiced business law for many years, and I still do as well. So I've worked with groups forming for-profit and nonprofit organizations as well. So as we sat in the meetings, we provided that education to the group about the formation of a co-op, referred them to some of the established resources that the USDA has. And so we were able to, within a 6-month period, sort of move them through that process where they actually went ahead and formally established their co-op. And they are, and they're still active here today. So I think that's something, one part of this process when we talk about the resilient food systems, you're going to have those co-ops, those bringing together of people who are interested, motivated, and active, in that space. However, as I was thinking about this, even prior to getting here this afternoon, we're talking about the resilient food systems, but I think that I keep thinking about ecosystem, and I'm seeing ecosystem as sort of like the larger environment that this food system sits within. And I think that there is a need for support, active support from other sectors as well. So that if we have these co-ops, we have these growers, we have these co-ops, but there needs to be support. You need to have buyers, you need to have individual buyers, family buyers, institutional type buyers. You need to have funding programs that can help facilitate some of these urban growers in terms of branching out to suburban and rural areas to expand their operations to scale. So I guess without rambling on too long, I just think that it's important to, and I think that's where extension comes into play, to think about it sort of more holistically and to just push this thing along, because I don't think that being passive about it is going to be effective, because we're going to have to actually change how things are done and change how individuals act. And I think so that's going to take some pushing. But that's just sort of my thoughts on it. And what we're doing with the co-op, we're still active with them, but we're pushing. We still have to try and get that technology piece implemented so that we can prove that it actually works. So I hope I didn't take too long to answer your question there, but
no, that's great. Thank you so much. And it really kind of sets up the next question. I think, you point out it's bigger than just, again, like Dana's helping us understand what it takes to to get more local food into the system, but it's got to be more than that, right? And Dana said it too, right? These farms have to be viable, and you've illustrated to us the organization, how you organize, and how the technology you use helps make that possible. But you pointed out that it's not, in the end, you also have to have customers, and you have to have people buy it and support, like Dina said, with the City of Columbus and so forth. So I'd like to turn now to Paige. And Paige, you really shared about that 30-mile meal, but but from your experience, how does a community go about building the brand, building the appetite, if you will, for local food, being willing to pay the prices, the fair price for that food? Just how do you help to cultivate that kind of environment in which these farmers can sell into?
Well, it's not as difficult as it sounds, because we find that when we bring these stories, particularly of farmers, to the forefront in large communities and in small rural communities, again, it develops a sense of pride. And so we use that social media platform, we use earned media to tell the stories of those local farmers and how hard they work to bring unique products to the table. And it can be through a community garden. It could be through a project like what we see happening in the beginning farmer programs in Edgemont and Trotwood right now. Telling those stories, seeing the work that people are doing and how they're learning and dedicating themselves to producing great products is something that builds community pride. And then, when we began telling the stories of farmers, and then we began showing the diverse amount of produce and meats and specialty foods that were being developed, 80 different kinds of specialty foods were being produced just within the city of Athens alone. And not every community has the capacity to produce specialty foods or that many, producers of specialty foods. But even when you bring those into it, those crafted items, whether it's, jars of jam or whether it's something larger like large scale dairy processing, like we saw the growth with Snowville Creamery, we know when we tell those stories that it builds community pride and it builds momentum to be able to support these farmers. We also shared a lot of facts and figures with them about local spending, about the multiplier effect, about how important it is both for our local government's coffers and for the income of our farmers and restaurants and distribution hubs and everyone involved in the local foods economy, that local spending kept all the things that we loved the most about our local foods in business and close to us. So sometimes just sharing data and putting it on paper and helping people to see that their little bit of extra spending, maybe their local foods cost them a little bit more. Maybe they can only get it once a week at the farmer's market, or maybe they have to go to a very specific store. Whatever the challenges and costs are that associated with it, that the small incremental amount that a consumer spends to support it has a high dollar impact, particularly in a local community. So, building those collaborative brands and just encouraging producers and growers, no matter what scale they're at, to brand their product, to engage in some level of marketing, and to really work those avenues of sales, and knowing that marketing and sales are two different things. I'm actually looking at the different marketing channels for a project that we'll release in the winter, and understanding that there's lots of different options for farmers to follow, but their budget and their time are the two most essential things. You never want to overload your own capacity, particularly when you're a farmer and you're growing things, right? So the most important thing is to have a product and have the time to get that product out of the ground and to the consumer. So looking at very easy marketing channels, including social media, including email blasts, particularly if you're running a CSA or you have a seasonal market. And then being able to identify exactly where your sales take place. Where is that farmer going to exchange the money with the consumer? And so we identify those sales channels and distribution channels as a way to help the farmers see where their dollars are going to be exchanged at and where they can make the most money at. You know, they might put a lot of effort going into a farmer's market that they might not sell a lot at, but they could establish a relationship with a local retailer that could command a higher volume from them. So working with farmers to understand the importance of marketing and branding, and also to convey to them to not be overwhelmed by it. Marketing and branding counts even in the smallest of communities. Consumers right now want to attach themselves to something good, and farming is good, and local foods are good. It's healthy, and it's good for our local economy, and it's a great story to teach our children and to teach grown-ups every day as well. So yeah, again, you know, a lot of people, they'll think, I don't have time for marketing, but if you don't have time for marketing, then how are you going to sell your product? And helping them to understand to not be overwhelmed by it, but to take on small bites of marketing and sales channels and focus on those, especially if they're beginning farmers and just starting out.
Super helpful. Thank you so much, Paige. So that brings me back to Michelle to wrap up this moderated piece, and then we'll open things for questions. So as Michelle's giving her answer to my question, do be thinking about, do you have any questions, burning questions, top of mind? Drop those in the chat so we can make sure we get those answered. So Michelle, this kind of, you know, Paige kind of set us up to think about, okay, marketing and branding and things. It's a collaborative effort. It's the community. It's tourism. It's Visitors Bureau. It's all those. But it's also, of course, the small farmer. And so that brings me back to the conversation about the farmer, right? And so you've had a lot of experience working with farmers, and you've had a lot of experience putting in, as Ambrose called it, sort of the ecosystem of supports, support businesses, supports like Central State Extension, putting all those supports in place to help farmers. And so I wonder if you can speak to that. How could a community that's listening in today, how could they start to build the ecosystem that makes this happen? And do you have a story to share about that?
So when I worked in Durham, North Carolina, they had a few problems. There was a decline in the number of new farmers, and so what happens when land isn't being farmed is it gets bought up by developers, and then it gets turned into housing, and then it's no longer in food production, and that can really hurt a community. And over time, what can happen is all of the supports that a farm needs in order to continue to farm, like a fertilizer or an agriculture supplier, they don't have enough farms to sell their products to, so they end up going out of business. And then the farms that remain have to travel further away to get the supplies they need, because, you know, some things you can't get online easily, like fertilizer, because it weighs a lot and it would cost a lot to ship. So the way communities have to sort of rally behind this whole local food movement, it's really important, and it needs to, there has to be, you have to see it on different realms. Like in the school systems, children have to be educated about where their food comes from and how to grow it, so that it's not seen as something that isn't what you want to go into when you grow up. Because there are people who if they knew about farming and about agriculture, would show they would not only like at it, but they would excel at it. And sometimes because it's not in the education system, and it's not emphasized as science in a business, agriculture and farming is a business. It's a business of growing food and supporting your community through the production of food. But a lot of times people get, by even their own families, get encouraged to not remain on the farm and to do something else. And so that I feel like is really important, to keep land and farming, and to get the community's assistance in supporting the production of food through all the things that we've been talking about today, and making sure that the generation that's being educated knows that this is an opportunity, and showing them that even if they don't own land, that there are pathways to starting a small farm.
That's great. Thank you. Now, I feel like, Michelle, Dana mentioned Mansfield earlier. I feel like you're picking up on that work, and I wonder if that's definitely an example of kind of a community that's creating the ecosystem, right? The different supports are being put in place, and you're part of that now, right? To help a farmer successfully grow and sustain their business. Do you care to share from that experience? And then we'll move to any questions. Please put your questions in the chat.
Sure. I actually was just there yesterday. So it's a group of entrepreneurial, enterprising farmers. Some of them came into the program with more knowledge about gardening and farming and growing produce than the others, but everyone's kind of working their way through. They're in, I think, they're closing their third year of the growing, and they work with a person who is their marketing manager that finds the opportunities, the restaurants that want to buy the produce that they're generating. In fact, they don't grow something unless they have a buyer, and that's kind of really important. It depends on what kind of model you know, how you're going about selling your product. But if you create a model where you want to sell wholesale and not have a roadside stand, or sell at a farmer's market, then you really do need to work closely with your buyers to find out what they need you to grow, how much they need you to grow, when they need that product, and then you need that information well in advance so that you can start planting the seeds so that they can get the product at the time they need it. And so there's a lot of planning and a lot of preparation so that the lag time in the supply chain is reduced. And for a beginning grower, that's one of the biggest challenges, is minimizing the lag, because there's a lot of things you don't know, and there's a lot of things that you have to learn. And there's also a challenge in, the day-to-day, oh, I've got this pest, I don't know what it is. And so having people like Dana, myself, and other extension educators across the state to help you solve those problems so that you can move on and focus your energy in production and sales. That particular grow up also works with another organization that provides them with cold storage. So when things are harvested, they have, until they get to their buyer, they have to be stored somewhere. And if they aren't stored in a refrigerated facility, then they start to deteriorate really quickly. And so they're working with a nonprofit that offers them space so that they can store their produce until it reaches the buyer. And that organization also coordinates the logistics of getting the produce to the buyer. They also have had to work with another organization to do some value-added products. Sometimes when you're a beginning grower, your produce doesn't look A quality, A grade, and so you don't want to have to compost all your money. So sometimes you want to find organizations that can create value-added products. It does add a little bit of risk because that means that you've got more money invested and you have a product that you still have to get rid of and sell. But on the other hand, that value-added product, sometimes it's a jam or a salsa or pickles. It has a longer shelf life, so the urgency to get rid of it isn't as immediate, and the sale price you can dictate, so you can potentially earn even more money from that value-added product. And so these growers have also worked with another farm who does value-added products to that with a USDA label to help them move some of the produce that wasn't A quality.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. It really is a complex thing to build all the infrastructure that needs to be in place to help our farmers. We do have a question in the chat, and I'll just open this up to anyone that feels compelled to respond. And we have about 7 minutes left just to make you aware of your timing. It says, how do you see the various Central State University Extension teams working together to build a resilient food systems in Ohio? So question from the chat, and I'll just open it up for anybody that feels compelled to respond to that.
Well, I can tell you there's a lot of collaborative efforts. Like, for example, I don't have a background in livestock. I know about bees, I know something about chickens, but that's not my area of expertise. But we do have a person on our team who that is their area of expertise. And when the opportunity arises and the need is there, we, even though they're in one part of the state, I'm in another, we have worked together to provide programming for that community. So we all have different backgrounds and different areas of expertise, and sometimes just tag teaming and to achieve the goal. There are just few of us, so we're trying to spread the wealth as much as possible.
And I'll think, oh, go ahead.
And I think that across our program areas, we have CED and A&R have been working together more, and obviously, we're a new extension service, and in terms of the onboarding of the large number of our staff members, it happened during the pandemic, so we're still in it. So the ability to use the technology, and doing things like we're doing here today, I think all of that helps. And I see us doing, some big things as we have gotten a chance to talk more and hear sort of the thoughts of our extension staff across program areas across the state. I foresee some real good things, and I'm going to keep saying what my message, and because I think that we have to look at it. I mean, we can talk nice, talk professional, but this is a battle, and we're going to have to push and make this change happen for the good of the people.
And I just want to piggyback on that, saying that we have to be very intentional, so we can't be passive. And I just look forward to as Ambrose mentioned, we're working with the A&R team on the Dayton projects, and we're identifying other urban farms, other communities throughout the state of Ohio that we can continue that work in. But it has to be very intentional, almost aggressive, in order to have an impact. We have a lot to offer, and I look forward to us working together as Extension as a whole to get the word out on what we're doing and just continue the good work that we're doing.
Wonderful, I agree. Anyone else want to answer that question?
I just want to give a shameless plug to the CED Extension staff. You know, we have a wonderful team, and now we get to work. We're showing the work in partnership with our A&R team as well as our other Extension teammates. So from a program leader perspective, I just want to say you guys make my job so much easier because we get to tap into these kinds of resources. We get to tap into your expertise. We get to let you do what you do best. And if there's anything that I can do to help keep this momentum going, these our external resource partners, our key stakeholders, all of you, thank you for what you're doing. In regards to CSU Extension, you're doing a wonderful job, and kudos to you, Eric, and getting this coordinated. Thank you.
But before we end, is Mr. Hubert, are you still on with us?
Yes, he is.
I see his mic's on mute. I don't know if he's at his computer or not. Hey, I just want. Yeah. I was wondering if you could share some words with us since you've moved on from your position at state director. I've been hearing in the community about you being active on your farm and everything, and what thoughts you had about our topic here today.
Well, first of all, thanks for the opportunity to say hello. I think that this was from a timing perspective, a very timely, considered discussion, certainly on the considering what's happening across the country. You know, the pandemic, we've learned a great deal in the pandemic. And I think sometimes we go through certain cycles in life, and the bigger question is, do we learn anything from them? You know, we're constantly seeing in the news every day about ports being backed up, and products have not been can't find any shelf, and etc. And so it raises a bigger question about then how do we play in that space? Do we look at our systems and figure out can we? Obviously there is a huge demand from a consumer perspective to have a product like food for its freshness and the holiness, the respect, and then knowing exactly where it comes from. So those are encouraging of things that surround around this topic. But the other bigger thing is, you know, when we see how things are playing out on the bigger scale of large agriculture, you know, we see plants not being able to get product through the system, and then we see even out in Wallace, a recent report where we got 4 major companies who control like 80% of all the beef and poultry processing, but yet and still from the farmer's perspective, the cost that they're getting, their input cost is going up, but the dollars that they're receiving for their product is extremely low. And so we're seeing producers develop a co-op about an hour to open up their own processing plant. So this is some, I think, although these are some challenging times, these are certainly some great opportunity times. So great to listen and to the discussion today. I think it's been some very good, but I think it just only touches just the surface of what the whole bit of opportunities that exist out there. And you know, we don't have the time today to really dive into all of those things, but this is an excellent starting point. But there's some huge, I think there's some huge opportunities, because I think we're at a phase in time where there is a space to play in with respect to what I would consider to be low scale agriculture from a regional and a local perspective. And I'll end on that note.
You know, as you mentioned that, it sort of brings to mind when you had Mall Bell, you know, the large telephone companies, and they broke them up and they called them all the baby bells. And so all these small telephone companies, and then everything seemed to explode, all these different opportunities. So that's very interesting, very interesting.
It really is, and I can't think of a better note to end on than that. The words of wisdom, Mr. Hubert. We just really appreciate that, and I want to appreciate everybody for being here. Our time is wrapping up, so I want to just thank you for your time. I do want to mention too that one of the things that does help our farmers, a piece of infrastructure that's important. It's this is the agency that Mr. Hubert was running, and that's the Farm Service Agency. We do have Kurt Lieber will be joining us next week, same time, same day, next Thursday, and so talk to all your farming friends. He's going to talk specifically to small farmers and what kind of financial support is available to get you to the next level. With that, we're going to wrap up again. I see Shashanda. Thank you, and we will follow up if we can't get to anything today. A question, we'll follow up separately in an email. On behalf of the team, A&R and CED teams, again, thank you, and let's meet back up next week.
Right, thank you for joining us on the conversation. This has concluded CED Office Hour Live.
Thank you.